We are not asking for pity. We are asking for the chance to be human again. Behind the razor wire, deep inside the walls of America's most notorious prisons, something is happening that you rarely see on the evening news. Inmates, the very people society has locked away, are leading a movement not for freedom, but for reform. From hunger strikes and solitary confinement to courtroom battles fought with nothing but pen and paper, these prisoners are demanding change, and the world is being forced to listen. America holds less than 5% of the world's population, yet nearly 25% of the world's prisoners. Over 2 million men and women live behind bars. But the real crisis isn't just the numbers. It's what happens inside. For decades, prison reform has been debated in state houses and courtrooms. Politicians argue, activists protest. But in the last 20 years, something unexpected happened. The loudest calls for reform began echoing from the inside. An inmate sits on the floor, scratching words into paper with a pencil stub. His voice narrates, "I have been in this cell for 23 hours a day for 11 years. I have not touched another human being in over a decade. If this is rehabilitation, then rehabilitation is torture." This was a letter smuggled out of Pelican Bay State Prison in California. It became the spark for one of the largest hunger strikes in U.S. prison history. In 2011, more than 6,000 inmates across California refused food. Their demand? The end of indefinite solitary confinement. From a windowless box, voices carried across the nation. And for the first time, prison officials were forced to confront the question, is this justice? Or is this cruelty? Change hasn't only come from protest, it's come from education. Meet Shaka Senghor, once a Detroit drug dealer convicted of second-degree murder. In prison, Senghor discovered books and to the power of words. His writings on redemption and reform made their way outside prison walls, eventually landing him a TED Talk viewed millions of times. His story is proof that the fight for reform isn't only about policies, it's about transformation. Inmates have launched their own reform networks. Groups like the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee and Jailhouse Lawyers Speak. From inside locked cells, they've coordinated nationwide strikes, calling for fair wages, better conditions, and the end of forced labor. And make no mistake, these strikes are dangerous. Organizers risk solitary confinement, loss of visitation, even violence. But still, they press forward, because for many, it's the only weapon left. In prisons across America, there are men and women who have never seen the inside of a law school, yet have become some of the most powerful advocates for reform. They're called jailhouse lawyers. Armed only with outdated law books and sheer determination, these prisoners file lawsuits, challenge abusive conditions, and hold the system accountable. Without them, some of the biggest prison reforms of the last 50 years would never have happened. Cases like these remind us that sometimes the only way to change the system is to challenge it from within. While some inmates turn to the courts, others turn to the written word. From San Quentin to Sing Sing, prison newspapers have long been a lifeline, not just for those inside, but for the outside world too. One of the most famous is the San Quentin News, written and edited entirely by prisoners. With stories on criminal justice, interviews, and reform debates, it has become a bridge between incarcerated people and society at large. Through journalism, prisoners have revealed abuse, exposed corruption, and even sparked investigations. Their voices, often silenced, reach us through ink on paper. In 2018, inmates from more than 17 states launched one of the largest coordinated prison strikes in U.S. history. Their demands? Fair wages, humane living conditions, access to rehabilitation, and an end to racist policies in sentencing. Organized by groups like Jailhouse Lawyers Speak, the strike spread like wildfire. Though officials downplayed the scale, the message was clear. The fight for prison reform was no longer isolated. It was national. And it was being led by the incarcerated themselves. Prison reform isn't just a men's story. Women, often overlooked in discussions about mass incarceration, have been powerful voices for change. Insert fact: the female prison population has grown by over 700% since 1980. From mothers fighting for the right to keep their newborns out of foster care, to survivors of abuse pushing for laws against shackling pregnant women during labor, these women have turned their pain into activism. A mother speaking at a visitation window. "I made mistakes, but my child shouldn't have to suffer because of them." From the inside, their voices challenge a system that punishes families as much as individuals. Across the country, one of the most powerful reform movements is education. Programs like the Barred Prison Initiative have shown that when inmates are given access to higher learning, recidivism drops dramatically. Inmates who earn degrees behind bars are far less likely to return once released. Yet funding for prison education remains limited. For reformers, the fight isn't just about surviving prison, it's about building a future beyond it. But the fight for reform comes at a cost. Inmates who speak out often face retaliation, solitary confinement, loss of visitation, denial of parole. In some cases, even violence. And yet, despite the risks, the voices from inside do not stop. Because for them, silence is a sentence worse than prison itself. Prison reform has often been slow, but there have been victories, real, tangible change born from voices on the inside. These rulings didn't come from politicians. They came from prisoners who refused to be silent, who fought with hunger strikes, with lawsuits, with sheer human resilience. These victories remind us, reform is possible, but it comes at a cost, and it is never given freely. When the cell doors open, the fight doesn't end. Formerly incarcerated men and women have become some of the strongest advocates for prison reform. They carry the struggle from inside the walls to the outside world. From small community centers to national stages, these voices remind us that reform isn't just about prisons. It's about society itself, about what we believe justice should look like, and about who we believe deserves a second chance. The fight for prison reform isn't over. In many ways, it's only just begun, and the loudest voices are still coming from the inside. If you've watched this far, you already know. This isn't just a story about prisons. It's a story about people, about struggle, and about change.